and we see that Sansa is on her side. I mentioned in my trailer breakdown that we knew what the outcome of this would be, but I like what Jaime said when he was confronted with his past. He said, "You want me to apologize? I won't. We were at war. Everything I did for my house and my family. I'd do it all again." I enjoyed that and how it highlights the motivation of the characters and brings real gravity to what they're facing now. Of course, Bran delivers the words, "the things we do for love," which is what Jaime said just before he pushed him out of a window in season 1. I thought it was kind of funny that Jaime acknowledged it, Sansa gave him a look, and then things just moved along like nothing happened. Sort of like, oh, that's just Bran, sometimes he says things. I was hoping for a Kingslayer reveal here that might have even restored some of his honor, but instead we see Brienne vouch for him, which was expected, and that was enough to sway Sansa. Jon predictably just wants more fighters, so the situation ends up resolved. Before they leave the hall, we see that Jon slips out without saying anything to Daenerys, and Jaime looks at Bran to acknowledge that he knows. I thought it was a nice touch in the scene that Jaime echoes what Brienne told him in the Dragon Pit in season 7, and that's right before she speaks up for him. In the transition, we see that Daenerys is pissed with Tyrion, and she has good reason to be. Tyrion acknowledges the situation by telling Varys and Jorah that one of them will probably be wearing the Hand of the Queen pin before it's all over. We head to the Forge, where a production of dragonglass weapons is in overdrive. Arya arrives to ask Gendry about her weapon, and in my notes for this scene, I wrote, "thick looks between these two." As in, she's there to find out about the weapon. She asks him about the Army of the Dead since he's seen them, but there's something else going on. You can feel it. I think it worked out well, and I like seeing this side of Arya. Next we go to Winterfell's Weirwood, where Jaime approaches Bran to apologize. Last night when I was trying to sleep, I was thinking about this scene and how I was hoping we were going to get a vision to pick apart in between these two episodes. That doesn't happen, but I'll talk about that more in the battle preparation scene. What we do get is that Bran isn't angry at Jaime or angry at anyone for that matter. He echoes what Jaime said about protecting his family, tells him that he wouldn't be able to help in this fight if he let them murder him, and when Jaime says what about afterwards, Bran delivers the ominous, "how do you know there is an afterward?" Even though I think everyone expected this to be the outcome of their reunion, I thought the acting was really good here by both characters, and I'm really liking season 8 Bran compared to what we saw last season. What this scene isn't though is conclusive as to what Bran knows about. Does he believe Jaime has a unique role to play in the battle, or does he fear that there isn't an afterward? It's not really clear. For now, we just have to chalk it up to being some three-eyed raven type stuff and move on. We get the next proper reunion between Jaime and Tyrion after we get a glimpse of all the preparation going on in the yard at Winterfell. They talk about Daenerys and Cersei. My big takeaway here is that Tyrion believed Cersei and that being pregnant had changed her. This was a big topic of conversation and speculation in the off-season because of how they cut that scene where we last saw them together. That perhaps Tyrion had cut some kind of deal with Cersei, but here, talking to his brother, who we wouldn't expect him to lie to, it doesn't appear to be the case. We can't know for sure what they said after the camera cut away, but at least for now it appears Tyrion believed that she would send her army north after he left that room. The brothers seem happy to be back together and they talk about dying in Winterfell. What got me really excited about this scene was the look of the Winterfell set itself. As we saw all the preparation going on around them, you can see how the show has expanded things and how big of an impact that might make on next week's episode. We get a lot of looks at the reinforcements and the way the side of the living are hoping to stop the approaching army. We get some training with Pod, and then we see Jaime go to Brienne. He tells her that he wants to fight for her, and it looks sort of like she's not really sure how to deal with the new Jaime, so they leave it at that. The next scene was a bit of a surprise. When we saw this image of Daenerys in her room a few times in the trailers, there was a lot of speculation about what was happening here. It turns out Jorah is there to advise her to ease up on Tyrion, and he also suggests that she should go talk with Sansa to put things right. It didn't dawn on me at the time, but knowing where we last see Jorah in this episode, I realized that this may be the last time we see Jorah and Daenerys sharing a scene like this. I think it's fitting that he gives her good advice, and I'm glad they moved this whole idea of her squabbling with Sansa along. She goes to Sansa and things start off pretty well. We see her be diplomatic and make some progress in building a good working relationship. Talk turns to Jon. We see Sansa is protective of her brother, worried that he might be manipulated because he's in love, and Daenerys does a good job of pointing out that she followed Jon north and not the other way around. They even have a laugh about Jon's height before things take a turn. Sansa echoes Jaime's question to Bran when she asks what happens afterwards. Things get noticeably tense when she starts asking about the status of the North after the war is over, but of course we get Maester Wolkin come in and interrupt. I'll talk about this at the end of the video since we have two big interruptions before the episode is done. We get Theon's arrival, and I'll tell it true, I almost teared up when he said he wants to fight for Winterfell. Even writing about it now, it's just one of those scenes I didn't necessarily expect to feel something about, but man, it worked. It was really good. Theon has officially come full circle from one of the least likable characters on the show to make it through a horrible couple of seasons of hardships and make it out on the other side. After that, we get a look at all the Northerners who have arrived at Winterfell. Davos is dishing out food, preparing the cannon fodder by giving them encouraging words, and we get a nice exchange that involves the Onion Knight, a small girl, and Gilly. I, for one, am glad they included this scene to emphasize what this fight is all about. Of course, the girl has a scar, so it reminds us of Shireen, but we get to see Davos do what he does best, and we also get to see a nice exchange with Gilly, who will be in the crypts when all hell breaks loose. Horns blow, announcing the arrival of Tormund, Beric, and Ed. They deliver the news that the Umbers and everyone else from the north of Winterfell who weren't there yet are now fighting alongside the dead. They also explain that the White Walkers will arrive before morning. We get a voiceover from Jon while we see everyone getting ready, and then we cut to this war planning session, or war council, whatever you want to call it. I didn't pay it much mind on first watch, but check out the setup on the map in front of them. It really shows what they're expecting, how they're expecting to be outnumbered. It comes out that they need to defeat the Night King to win. Jaime says if that's true, he'll never expose himself, and then Bran cuts in. I enjoyed this on so many levels. Bran explains that the Night King will expose himself because he will come for him, that he's tried it many times before with many different three-eyed ravens. Then Sam becomes all of us and says, why? What does he want? He gets to ask the question we all want to know the answer to, and Bran answers that he wants an endless night. He wants to erase this world, and I'm its memory. Sam fills in the blanks of why this makes sense, and then the looks on everyone's face when Bran reveals the Night King's mark is just fantastic. I wonder what's going through their heads as he's telling them that he is the target, and that he has this mark on him, so the Night King always knows where he is. We don't get to find that out, but we do find out that Bran wants to wait out in the open at the Godswood to draw the Night King to him. I have always thought that that would be the deal, that he was coming for Bran, and I mentioned a trap would probably be necessary in my trailer breakdown for this episode. We get an idea how they are planning on doing that. Jon says they need to keep the dragons close to protect Bran, but not too close to keep the Night King away. When Arya asks if Dragon's Fire will stop him, Bran admits he doesn't know because it's never been done before. Theon steps up to protect him with the Ironborn, and we also learn that they are planning on starting a fire around the castle and the trenches we've seen them dig. Daenerys tells Tyrion that she wants him to stay in the crypts because he's too important to her, and with their plan in place, we move on. Jon beats it out of the room again when it looks clear that Dany wants to talk to him. Tyrion pulls up a chair to hear Bran's story after the others have left, and I think that's a pretty nice way to end things. There could be something going on there, but I'm not going to speculate that right now. Back outside, we get a one-on-one scene with Missandei and Grey Worm. Talk about how they don't really fit in Westeros and make plans to go to Noth after the war is over. It's a good scene, but I have to point this out. I mentioned that the Jorah and Daenerys one-on-one scene might be the last we see them share, and I feel like this is the same thing. I have predicted that both Jorah and Grey Worm will die in the battle, and this scene makes it feel all too real. We go to the top of the walls, and who is that in the corner of the screen? Ghost finally shows up, and no one as much as mentions him. Apparently Jon and his direwolf had their reunion off-screen somewhere else at a different time, but either way it's nice to see him, even if it's completely underwhelming. Sam asks Jon if he's told Dany yet, and we see that it's eating him up. Ed joins them, and we get our Night's Watch reunion, which he punctuates for us by saying, and now our watch begins. It's great to see these three together. together, and we get a little comedy to lighten things up pre-battle. Personally, I cracked up when Sam added that he stole a considerable number of books from the Citadel Library to his list of badassery. It's another scene that I'm so glad they gave us, but it ends on a somber note when Ed says, "Last man left, burn the rest of us." Jaime and Tyrion have an exchange where they think about how Tywin would feel that both of his sons were likely going to die fighting for the Starks. It's a nice moment that reminds us how far both of these characters have come. And then we get more characters come in. Brienne and Pod arrive, Davos and Tormund follow next. And we get a story from Tormund about where he gets the name Giantsbane. He explains that he killed a giant when he was 10, climbed into bed with his wife, who suckled him for 3 months thinking it was her baby. After that, we get a better reunion with the Hound and Arya. She asks why he's there, when was the last time he fought for someone else, and he points out that he fought for her. It's going well, but Beric's arrival prompts Arya to leave as she doesn't want to spend her final hours with two miserable old shits. Arya then gets her weapon and seems pretty happy with it. We don't really get a super close look at it. She asks Gendry why Melisandre wanted him, finds out that he is Robert Baratheon's bastard. As she's talking about Melisandre, we see things take a turn, and she actually makes a move on him. It's pulled off pretty well, and it works to underline the severity of the situation once again. I was never big on the idea of these two coming together romantically. Their relationship seems sort of like a sibling one because they were young, but sometime really soon they're going to be fighting for their life. It totally works that Arya would want to have this experience before that happens, and I'm glad they added it. It also ties in with what I was saying in last week's recap. It's nice to see some humanity in her character again, and here she shows us another brand new side that we haven't seen before. In the after the episode, the showrunner said they wanted to show how this was probably everyone's last night, or at least the characters were preparing for the inevitability that some of them weren't going to make it through this. They wanted to show how different characters would handle it, and I think it works really well that they put this scene with Arya in there. Back where the other characters have gathered to stay warm, Tyrion points out the fact that almost everyone in the room had fought Starks at one time or another, and that now they're all gathered in their castle ready to defend it together. In the process of recalling the battles they survived, it comes out that Brienne isn't a knight, which Tormund can't believe. I have to say that I wasn't a fan of Tormund following Brienne around and laying it on heavy this entire episode, but if the payoff was for Brienne to get knighted, then I'm completely fine with it. I mentioned this moment earlier because to me this is just so huge. There's an idea of what a knight is or should be that permeates the writing of this series, a series that consists of characters created by an author who likes to write them in shades of gray. Because of that, Brienne has always stood out as being like what a true knight should be, but would never be able to carry that title because she's a woman. Watching her kneel and arise as a knight of the Seven Kingdoms still gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. In the name of the warrior, I charge you to be brave. In the name of the father, I charge you to be just. In the name of the mother, I charge you to defend the innocent. And damn, just damn. After that, we hear Lyanna Mormont tell her cousin Jorah that she will not hide underground in the crypts during the battle. No way Jorah is going to talk her into it, and we see Sam give him Heartsbane. Sam explains that Jeor Mormont taught him to do what's right, and it's right for Jorah to wield the House Tarly Valyrian steel blade in the upcoming battle. Then, speaking of goosebumps, Tyrion asks for a song and Pod steps up to start singing. This was a fantastic nod to book readers as you realize it's Jenny's song just as the camera starts to travel from character to character. It's magical, if not completely depressing, because we know they won't all live through the coming episode. Jenny's song is one book readers would know, and it would take like an entire video to explain it, so I won't. But it's also interesting because when HBO put up the recording of it, they actually called it Jenny of Oldstones. Anyways, too much to get into here, but damn, that's good, and I imagine Brian Cogman, who is credited as the writer of this episode, is responsible for that, so bravo. Before we go into the crypts, we see Sam and Gilly laying in bed with little Sam. We see Sansa and Theon giving each other some looks. Arya is laying awake in bed where Gendry's sleeping, Grey Worm kissing Missandei, and Jorah going out into the field. All with Pod delivering the refrain of, "And she never wanted to leave, never wanted to leave." Killed it. In the crypts, Jon is in front of his mother's statue when Daenerys comes to him. He explains that Rhaegar and Lyanna were in love and were married, and then drops the truth bomb we have been waiting to see. I think Kit Harington and Emilia Clarke both did a good job of delivering this scene. But as I mentioned at the beginning, knowing they were going to cut this thing off kind of took away from it. It's really completely unresolved when they hear the horns blow outside. When they do go up, we see the camera pull away from Tyrion on the battlements and get our first glimpse of the White Walkers. We'd seen the hoof of the horse, we knew they were coming, we figured that's where the episode was going to end, but we do actually see the White Walkers themselves. It's clear that the Night King isn't pictured with them, but there are at least 8 White Walkers, not whites, on horseback that we see close up. When you brighten up the picture and look closely, it appears that there is a line of horses that goes out all the way across the battlefield. I can't say for sure, but it looks like there may be a lot more White Walkers than were originally believed, but it's also possible that they have whites on horseback too, so I'm just going to leave it there for now. I want to get this video finished and then I'll go back and take a closer look. I've already written 3,500 words here, so my idea of doing a quick recap is already getting away from me, but at the very least, it's interesting to see that they have so many people on horseback. The episode ends there and the table is officially set for the battle we've all been waiting to see. There were a lot of great moments, we learned some important information, and I almost teared up more than once. I mentioned that I didn't like the interrupted conversation with Daenerys, and I definitely don't. Both interrupted conversations with Daenerys, I should say. I can see and accept that they might have thought this was the best way to set up the back half of the season. We have to keep in mind that these are the short episodes, and there is still a lot of story after the battle, but I'm not sure how I'm feeling about that. I was also somewhat disappointed that we didn't get a Weirwood vision from Bran, but felt a little bit better about that when we found out that he was going to be hanging out by the tree during the battle. This could make for some interesting viewing. It also opens the door for him to confront the Night King in the Weirwood net. I really like that they fit in some character moments here, so many of them really when you think back. I think most of us thought that the conflict with Dany and Jon coming to terms with his parentage might push these other characters out of the picture, so it's nice that we got to see some of these conversations. The other side of that though is that they'll probably be those characters' last moments, but hey, we know it's coming to an end, so let's take what we can get. I thought the idea of giving us an answer